Welcome to the Wealth Defenders with Terry Cox. Phoenix, West Coast, East Coast, worldwide, you know what time it is. It is time to get your money right. And Terry, you already know he's got nearly 20 years of money management experience. And with that type of experience, you know he can help you get your money right too. Consumer advocate Bruce Rosenblum here with you as well. I want to introduce Terry. Terry, it's great to see you again.
Hey, Bruce, Happy New Year.
Oh, Happy New Year. I can't believe we're 2025, quarter of a century. We're here doing it big.
It's amazing. It's amazing. That one went fast, didn't it?
Oh my, blink of an eye for sure. Yeah. And I know I did a lot. You did a lot too, but I feel like we definitely made some mistakes in 2024. I mean, we all make mistakes, but I think when it comes to money, it's about minimizing those mistakes, right?
That's right. Minimize the damage. That's for sure.
That's it, because I mean, this is your money, this is your nest egg. So we're all about minimizing that damage here and making sure you can avoid the pitfalls that are very common in this realm. That's why today I believe we're talking about some retirement planning mistakes that are supposed to be avoided, that you can help people avoid. And I'm really interested in this list we got here, because I know I'm guilty of some of this stuff, and I need you to set me straight, Terry.
All right, I'll see what I can do, Bruce.
Okay, well, I'm looking at our list right here. The first one right here, we've got waiting too long to plan. And I think that's a great way to start this list right here.
Yeah, that's a big one. When I was looking at our list here, it reminded me I have a futures calculator. So we can plug in some knowns, and we can calculate a future value.
Yes.
And if you'll indulge me for a couple of minutes.
Oh, please do.
Let's talk about this. So I'm going to give you a bad scenario.
Okay.
Just so we can have a place to like jump off on. So for the knowns that I want to plug in here, let's just say that someone is 22 years old.
Okay.
And they have decided that they're going to retire when they're 62 at the age when they can start Social Security.
Sure.
So they have a 40-year window. So that's our first known that we have.
Okay.
We're planning on working for 40 years. So we're going to plug that in. And we know that the current value of our portfolio, let's say it's zero. We're starting at zero.
Okay.
So our present value is nothing. Let's say that our salary is $25,000 a year.
Okay. So this 20 years, early 20s, making $25,000 a year. Okay.
And let's say you never get a pay raise for 40 years. You make $25,000 a year for 40 years. Okay.
It's painful, but okay. Yep.
That's rough. That's a bad scenario, right? But over those 40 years, your cumulative amount of money that you made, that's $1 million, right? So it's spread over. I like to point that out, because even when people are trying to calculate their future value, knowing what your cumulative earnings are is really important, because sometimes that's a light bulb moment, okay? Yeah. But let's say that's the scenario, and we decide that we're going to commit 10% of our annual income to savings.
Okay.
That's $2,500 a year. Okay. Are we good so far?
That's right. So we get you're making $25K and you're placing 10% to savings. So that's the $2,500. I got you.
Mm-hmm. And let's just say that we average a rate of return of 7% for those 40 years.
Okay.
So there's our four knowns. So what we're trying to figure out is, what will our future value be 40 years from now?
Right. Because you got 7%.
You know what that works out to?
Yeah.
So 40 years, $2,500 a year, average 7% rate of return. That puts you at a little, I don't know if you can see that or not, a little over $499,000. Let's round it up. That's $500,000.
$500,000. It's
stepping into retirement. Yeah. So who wouldn't want that?
Right. And it stands out to me because this person has a modest salary, but they were still able to make it because they started early.
Yeah, give yourself some runway.
Right.
So,
that seems like a big takeaway here. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But let's just to compare and contrast. Let's say this person waited 2 years. They're like, well, it's only $2,500. I'm going to wait a couple years. Well, if we change our number of years to 38,
okay.
So now we went from 40-year window to a 38-year window with the same other scenarios, $2,500 a year, 7% return. Yes. That drops your future value to $431,000.
Wow. So you lose out on 70, 80K.
70 grand just by waiting 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So, so I want our listeners to think about those calculations and think about their salary. And what if they committed to 10% a year, what would that look like 30 years from now, 40 years from now? So it's sometimes it sounds like a daunting task, and it sounds like it's going to take us a long time to accomplish this. But time goes so fast. That's going to be here before you know it.
Very true.
So keep that long runway on your side if you can.
And I like how we're speaking to people who are not big money balling, because a lot of people, that's, it's okay to make that much, but you got to understand, hey, if I start early, I can be big money balling eventually. And I can generate the nest egg. I just got to start ahead of time so that it compounds. That the miracle of compounding interest, as you've told me, Terry, it's really important.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue into some of our other topics that we're going to hit on here today. Yeah, because we can always come back to this.
Sure.
And talk about how you can really shrink that number, shrink your 40-year window to a 30-year window.
Yes.
Or maybe keep that 40-year window and build that nest egg even higher.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Big fan of that. And I would love to hear what else we have on that we can talk about here, mistakes that are to be avoided in addition to waiting too long to plan. What else are we not supposed to do here in 2025?
So, you want to set goals, and by setting down and going through a calculator like that, you're setting your goals, and you want to make sure that you review your portfolio at least annually, pretty regularly. So, and the reason that you do that, you hear people talk about rebalancing. What does that mean? So let's say you've got a portfolio that's 80-20, 80% stock, 20% bonds.
Okay.
And historically, when bond prices go up, stock prices go down, and when stock prices go up, that's the historic way of thinking, right? So you go into a portfolio review, and we've had a great year on the stock market, and your portfolio that was an 80-20 a year ago might be a 90-10 today. Your stock prices have appreciated, and it now represents 90% of your portfolio.
Okay.
Where you can skim some money off the top to get you back down to the 80 and drop that back into your bond side of the portfolio. So the oldest advice in the world, sell high, buy low. That's what you can do on a rebalance. And vice versa. If the stock market goes down, bond prices are up. Now maybe you're a 70-30. Now you skim that 10% off the bonds, drop it into the stocks, get you back to an 80-20. That's just going to keep you in balance over the course of your working career.
Gotcha. So that 80-20 split, that's the golden ratio.
Well, I just use that as an example. How we arrive at what your ratio is going to be is based off your comfort level with risk, your risk tolerance questionnaires.
I got you. Because I was curious, how can people mess this up here? Because we're talking about mistakes, and I guess you want to make sure that your split corresponds with your own personal values and what you want to get in the very end.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that scenario that we were talking about with somebody 22 years old, at that point, they might be 100% stock.
Because they can afford they can afford to risk a little bit. Yeah,
absolutely. But by the time you get 55, 60, and you're starting to get into that retirement red zone, you want to make sure that ratio is the other way, because you don't want to get whipsawed with the market and say, hey, I'm going to retire next year, and we have another financial crisis or some disaster, and we drop 30-40% in the portfolio. Now you just delayed retirement a number of years.
Yeah, right. Speaking of that, Terry, let me ask you, what do you think the outlook is on the market for 2025? Because I've been hearing a lot of things from a lot of people, and I've been seeing a lot of data points. It's hard to tell where things are going to go, and I want to get your take on it.
Well, I think we're in line for a pretty good year, but there's a lot of underlying factors that are out there. What's inflation going to do? Is it going to hold? Is there going to be any kind of a correction or a recession? So we just need to be able to keep our eyes on that and be able to adjust in real time if that unfolds.
That's sound advice, I think.
Yeah,
we got to wait and see, and see we will one way or the other. And that's why I'm glad we're talking about these mistakes here, because you don't want to wait too long to plan. You don't want to, have too much debt here. Let's talk about that for a bit. Debt is a big issue, no matter where you're at in this process, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I was thinking about one of the reports that you brought up on a previous podcast where it said more than 50% of the people did not have $500 set aside for an emergency.
Yeah, right.
So if you're making some money and you're just spending the money, and then you're racking up some credit card debt, over the last, I guess that would have been 22 and 23 when the Fed was raising interest rates very aggressively.
Right.
That affected credit card interest rates.
Sure.
So we've seen some of those credit card rates that were 30%. So if you put something on a credit card and you don't pay it off, you're paying a very high. And you think about when we were running our scenario, getting a 7% rate of return, 8-9 rate of return on the money that we're keeping, but the money that we're spending, it's 2 or 3 times that. And that could be a huge problem.
Got to make sure your outputs are less than your inputs here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure.
That's good. So obviously pay off your high interest debt as quickly as you can. It's a big mistake a lot of people make. As you said, people buying things that maybe they can't afford. I think we've all been guilty of that by one point, I think.
Absolutely. And you see that a lot with younger people just coming into the workforce, and the old keeping up with the Joneses appearance. I heard a saying once that we spend money that we don't have to buy things that we don't need to impress people that we don't know.
Or don't like.
Or don't like, right?
Sure. Yeah. It seems like it. And speaking of younger folks, I've noticed a lot of people closer to my age that they want to buy the hot cars of the day. They want to buy the Chargers and the Challengers and the Camaros. But boy, those come with a hefty price tag, and depending on how you finance that, if you're going that route, you could be underwater for a very, very long time. So it behooves people to get with Terry. That's the bottom line. Get with Terry. Do not get saddled in high interest debt if you can avoid that. But if you are, Terry can definitely help you out with that too.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And I tell people who are in that situation, when we have our first meeting with someone like that, I say, hey, look, for the next 30 days, don't change anything in your life. The only thing that I want you to do is get yourself a piece of paper and a pencil, and every time you spend money, write it down. Because that's a great eye-opener, because sometimes people don't realize how much money they're spending for coffee or fast food or whatever the case may be. And you can make a few little tweaks that aren't going to affect your day-to-day life, and it's going to put money back in your pocket.
Absolutely right. I mean, I'm reminded of something as simple as the toll roads going to work. I happen to, I do take a toll road, but I've done the math, and I love it because it saves me time, and of course you can't get your time back. But man, I'm paying for that. I'm paying for that seriously, like every day, and it adds up considerably when you look at it in the context of the entire year.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So that's why I'm with you, Terry. You got to sit down and you got to itemize things and look at them too. Any other mistakes that you want to advise people against before we wrap up today?
Yes, if you have an employer-sponsored retirement plan,
okay,
make sure you take advantage of that, because especially if you're younger, if the market goes down, that's not a bad thing for you, because you get more for your money when you're making those deposits as the market's going down, because eventually it's going to come back, right? So the other thing you want to make sure that you do is, if your employer matches your contribution, make sure you're contributing enough to get that employer contribution, because that's free money into your portfolio. And when we're talking about saving, so if you were saving $2,500 a year, and suddenly you can find out that your employer will kick in another $300 or $400 a year, think of how that amps up our numbers over that future value number over 40 years. Think of how that number increases.
It's a great tip, because if you don't do this, you're leaving money on the table. You're just letting it go.
Yeah, and a lot of times, when you go to work, you get your package from AR, and they're like, oh yeah, you've got a 401k plan, and you're like, oh, okay, well, what does this even mean? And you're looking through and you're trying to make selections on your own. So people clients that I have, if they're still working and they have 401k plans, I encourage them to bring those in to their when we have our reviews. And then that way we can, number one, make sure what they have in their 401k plan complements what they have with us. But also we can help them adjust their 401ks. If things are going on in the market, we can adjust and make sure that they're not taking a hit there either.
Gotcha. Great advice. I would love to talk more about that, but I just hate that we're hitting time here. But
yes,
you've taught me a lot today. I appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to getting some more tips here. But thank you very much for this great conversation, Terry.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. It was another good one, Bruce.
Yes, sir. We're going to put the information on the screen for our listeners and viewers out there. Take a look and make sure you contact Terry if you want that no-cost, no-obligation financial review. And, of course, subscribe to the Wealth Defenders. You know we got your back when it comes to the best money management tips out there. For Terry Cox, Bruce Rosenblum, we are signing out. We'll see you next time on the Wealth Defenders.
See you, Bruce. Thanks.